Hope well finds message. You finds message. This message. I well you finds you. I hope well hope message. This I you this well finds you hope you this I well.
Hi, welcome to another episode of I Hope This Message Finds You Well. I am Kris Dittel, and with me is my friend and colleague Eloise Sweetman. Today we share an interview we did with curator Cédric Fauq in May 2021.
Cédric Fauq is Chief Curator at Capc Musée in Bordeaux. Previously, he worked as Curator of Exhibitions at Palais de Tokyo and Nottingham Contemporary. At the latter, he developed trans-historical and multidisciplinary exhibition projects. For instance, Still I Rise, Feminism, Gender, Resistance, and Grace Before Jones, Camera, Disco, Studio. He also curated performances combining dance, music, video, and edited several publications.
I hope this message finds you well.
I wrote down this little note from this interview I listened with you, and you said how every exhibition should aim for the abolition of the exhibition itself, and that spoke to my heart because this sounds very radical, but I know it's about the politics of exhibition. It's about the politics of exhibition making and how we think about it. And I just love that, how you also talk about how you want to work with positions, that there is always this possibility of refusal and kind of getting out of that concept and kind of sabotaging it, or at least not taking it for granted, right? Maybe if you want, you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of love the exhibition format and at the same time struggle with it. But I think it's very much related to how the artists I'm in conversation with are dealing with it as well. And the kind of practices that I'm interested in and the way they always, try to sabotage a certain aspect, whether it is the temporality. For instance, with Sumchu, when I worked with her for a solo at the Contemporary, and there was that gesture of changing the whole structural, architectural element of the show, but without telling anyone, which had an impact in the way people were going to navigate the show and then encounter the works that were sticking to the same place, basically. And it's that whole kind of, it was a whole attempt at undermining the idea of the exhibition as something static, but also something that is conveying a certain idea of truth in a way, and how exhibitions are actually works of fiction in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that people that are not used to going to exhibitions often take things for granted when and it can be quite violent, I think, and that's what I'm always trying to think about. How to kind of shift things, make the connection between what's inside the exhibition and what's outside, and that's very much something that I've tried to do with Rita Scali, for instance, and with that attempt of, well, it was not an attempt, it's something she's done several times, bringing verbena leaves at Palais de Tokyo, and actually from Morocco to Palais de Tokyo, and using that specific shipping network that is only used by the Moroccan diaspora, which was very challenging for the institution itself, because there is no invoices, no certainty of when things are going to arrive, for instance, and then the idea of people being able to take the verbena and take it away from the institution, and that kind of asking lots of questions about the health and safety, basically, and it's always putting me in complicated positions to try to enact those gestures. And I'm often asking even myself, do people get it? Like, is it something? And I mean, maybe people don't even need to get it. Maybe it's only like from the level of the artist practice and my position as a curator, and trying to kind of shake the institution a little, instead of just like saying we're going to loan that work and put it there. And in those kind of processes, I'm trying to find create some holes and breaches, I would say. And yeah, it's the whole question of value. I think I'm trying to kind of understand at the moment. But coming back to this idea of abolishing the exhibition, I think it's for me the whole. I was very much interested very early on as I was studying in the where it was coming from, the exhibition format, and the norms around it, and I kind of delved more and more into the colonial kind of roots of the whole thing, and that's why I'm a curator in the first place. I would say, at least that's why I'm still working as a curator, because I feel like there is that kind of impossibility of what I'm trying to do, of like trying to think and deal with and through Blackness with the exhibition format, when actually there is like a whole impossibility of those two things kind of coexisting in a way. Because in a way you could say that Blackness was, or like the idea of race was invented or formatted by the exhibition in some ways, because it was like used as a tool to rationalize differences and explain why certain people had to be seen as less than, basically. So, and their cultural productions as well. So yeah, I think that's I don't know if that's something. I mean, I don't even know if that's something that I have in my mind all the time. But that's definitely something that I found interesting. This very problem that I try to inhabit, and that's probably why I said this.
And I think it's taking the banana leaves from Morocco to Palais de Tokyo.
Verbena.
Oh, the banana, sorry.
Verbena.
Oh, the banana.
Yeah, sorry. But banana, that could have happened as well.
I'm like, okay. But I think like what I think is really interesting about that is that this, like, the exhibition and the artwork in tandem is like elastic in some ways. That also, like, it's not totally graspable by the audience necessarily, perhaps not even graspable by you or the artist, and that kind of, it's destabilizing this traditional idea of what an exhibition is, which is what you mentioned before. And I think for me as a curator, this is what's really exciting. Like, it's like this small glimpse into a process or a journey or an experience that, for me, I'm interested in from the position of like feminist practices, but also like this idea of exhibition intimacy, and it's also these sorts of experiences what makes art so exciting and important. And
I mean, it's pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I think one of the things that's related to the idea of abolishing exhibitions is also the idea of something that I don't know if I was talking about this already last year, but I kind of came around with this idea of curators as that figure of power, basically, in the way the art world is functioning at the moment. Specifically for me as someone who works within institutions, and I could say for an institution, which I have lots of problems with, and at the same time keep occupying as a position. And so it's kind of always trying to undermine that very position as well. And I've kind of started to speak about curatorial vulnerability, which now, I think the more I say it, the less I believe in. I mean, it kind of becomes that kind of performance of vulnerability as well. But I still believe that it has like a meaning in the way that it enables me to kind of always think of my relationship with artists and how I establish trust, a relation of trust, and always for me trying to actually put myself in a position where I'm not reproducing a certain pattern of power, I mean, there's always gonna be like that kind of bias, because it's like as an institutional curator, you invite, you choose, you kind of decide on a lot of things, and then it's like very difficult. So that's why those projects, like the one with Rita Scali, was like so interesting to me, because they were like putting me in a difficult position as well. But she also did, and in some respect, I feel like the project was a failure, because it was actually difficult, and it caused a lot of harm in many ways. And she knew it was going to be like that. But like, does it have to be that way? I mean, in between us, it was always fine, but in a way, the institutional violence got kind of, it hit us.
Yeah.
Basically. Because
I imagine once you start messing, with the kind of modus operandi of art institutions about insurance, safety, and, the protocols, then maybe your position also as a curator becomes, a little bit more, how to say, conditioned in this institution, that you are suddenly not playing along with those roles. But I wonder if that's what you meant it with the institutional violence, and maybe towards the artists as well.
It's that, and at the same time, I felt very, very bad, because as someone who works for the institution, I'm also working with colleagues, and so it's also like how I do not want to put them in difficult positions either. So it's like, okay, you don't want to put anyone in difficult positions.
Yeah.
And you end up actually like causing lots of difficulties for everyone. So, and at the same time, I had like the most interesting conversations about this work with like the production team that was trying to understand why the shipping company network, why this one, why the Verbena had to come specifically from Morocco, why it had to be taken away by the audience afterwards. All those elements were actually like leading us to very interesting conversations about art. And it's I think one of the most interesting conversations I had about art at Palais de Tokyo was around this, the how to make this work happen, logistically speaking, brought us to like so many layers of like, in terms of the conceptual aspects of the work and Rita Scali's practice, basically. So at the end, we were all very happy.
Yeah.
But still.
No, I think like it seems like I was thinking some years ago in my own work, like there were a lot of things that I was doing. Like I haven't really worked for an institution so much, more as a freelancer, but often entering into the institution, I would be doing things or proposing things with artists that the institution has never done before. And it's only with the kind of the benefit of a hindsight that I understand the difficulty that I was coming against was the fact that that nobody knew what to do, and that like was very scary for often the people. But at the time, it felt very violent, and that also like the sense of the way, like, because as a curator that invites an artist, you also feel responsible for all their experience, and I think it's true for you, Kris. Like the responsibility of making sure that the artist is treated. And the artwork is also treated, and that's the priority in our work. And then like, but for a long time, I was like, I'm a really difficult person. Like people don't like working with me because I'm so difficult. And then I realized, no, it's because these institutional processes are totally limited, and that actually like they're deeply, deeply, deeply flawed. And like, and it's like, there is a reason why art exists, to also help us navigate and undo these structures. Yeah, but
more and more, I feel.
Yeah. Now that I'm just talking about myself.
No, but I think it's something that I deal with like on a daily basis, like in terms of asking myself actually, like when it comes to like setting up projects, trying to find the balance between making things easy for everyone, and at the same time actually like bringing something that's gonna create a bit of disruption.
Yeah.
And I think I also started to now realize that you cannot do that without thinking of the impact that it can have on everyone. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you cannot embark in like those kind of processes because the maybe it's not the right time for the decision, maybe it's not the right time for the artist. Like, yeah, and I started to also being able to say, okay, well, that's not something you can do all the time. Yeah. even for the audience, I think it's difficult to follow. Sometimes you also need to kind of embrace. I also embrace the exhibition format sometimes too. There are some aspects of it that I really appreciate, and I think in the way you can tell stories is something that I've learned a lot with Samson, the director at Musée and Contemporary, and I like that, telling stories as well, because some of them need to be told, and the exhibition format enables so many kind of ways to tell them. So it's something that I've been doing quite a lot, I think. And there is that freedom. I mean, that's one of the things that I love when I'm experiencing an exhibition is being like, wow, I'm learning something, I'm discovering something. I'm just very enthusiastic about this moment. Where you like suddenly a relationship between two people or like two things is being highlighted, and I have lots of conversations with friends who are like kind of not believing anymore in like contemporary art as it is being produced today and the way it's functioning today and the place it has in like the broader cultural landscape. I'm not at that stage yet because I keep seeing good stuff, basically. and it's also like a thing where you have conversations that I don't know where else I could have them. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's although I can have those like very harsh or difficult positions. I think on the art world and on the exhibition format, I also really believe in it somehow. I'm full of contradictions. So.
But I think that's important, right? Yeah, I think that there's like to also like to understand one's position and also to see the flaws, and the flaws is important, right? Otherwise, it kind of becomes a cult of that we're all thinking the same way, and that also like. I think that what is wrong with art and what is wrong with curating, there is the possibility of hopefully to change it through the way that we choose to work, right? Like maybe it won't happen straight away, but I would say that I'm quite an idealist when it comes to which is why Kris and I get along really well, because Kris, I would say, is much more critical than, what did you say? Like, which is, I think it's really
it's true. I'm really grappling with that because, it's very easy to hop on the train of criticism and then you get in this spiral. And in the art world, when you look at its politics, oftentimes it's very easy to kind of drown in it. And I'm really trying not to. So I want to be more affirmative and see the good things. But, I don't know. It's there, I'm sure. Like, I think it's good to see things in its complexity without saying, like, this is good or bad. Or I don't want to be, like, fatalist in sense of, like, this is doomed or... But, I really cherish that kind of complexity and negotiating about things and understanding that we are always in a process and we will never arrive to, like, saying this is a good way to go or these are the right ethics.
As long as it creates discussions and debates and that it can, like, move forward in terms of, like, I think it's something that is like beyond the art world in a way. I think we started to become very much aware of our own positioning in terms of where we, when we do something, what kind of context we are operating within and what kind of impact it has on the broader idea of the world. And And I think contemporary art was wild at some point.
Yeah.
In terms of the violence that it could produce on people and ecologically as well. And, and it's not solved, but you can definitely see that some people, there is like people that are trying to do the work of making that a center subject in the field, and I think it's very, very important. I think the institutions are not yet to the stage, or like a certain. It's always difficult to say institution because it's like so, but places that are at a certain scale, are not able to always take that on in charge, those criticism and because we don't know yet how. I mean, unless we just decide that those places should not exist, and art should be presented in other ways, and exhibitions are not within institutions. I mean, it's also like a possibility, and lots of curators do that. It's not a new thing either to think about this. I think like it's always, and the way it happened a lot was in the context of biennials, which is also very problematic, but in some ways there are stuff to take as well from those formats as well, to kind of make art happen in different ways. And I think that's what there's that text that I wrote last year on the practices of Cameron Rowland, Caroline Lazard, Dima Abbas-Yokon, and Abbas Zaidi, and I think those are people that I'm very interested in a way that they look beyond the exhibition space and the institutional framework. At the same time, adjusting the institutional framework, but also like taking it further every time. So that's it's definitely like I think there is like very great stuff happening.
Definitely. No, I was reading your piece in Musée, and it was also really, really interesting to see the works of the artist, because I was like, it's so. I don't know how
go for it.
How to explain it, like, but like, I could totally see like their works in shows that I curate. But most of them I didn't know. I know Caroline Lazard, it was also interesting how Essex Street really as a gallery is always a good place to go. So, but how like in the exhibitions that I'm curating, like their work would fit so well in terms of the questions of, again, intimacy. I'm also working with ideas of like declaring it oneself as not knowing, as like we would talk about it off, but also like as aesthetic objects, like there's something of it's like they're so exciting, but yet like our entry points are coming from such different places. But how like that's what's also so wonderful about art, is that like we can really find ways of in your case more deeply, because I'm now getting to know them, but to connect to them in a way that like I feel like these works are like, I need to get to know them more. They're very important. Like you're also like, do you know the work of Charlotte Posenenska?
A little.
Like I feel like a lot, some of the things that she's speaking about in her work, like I think connects really beautifully to there. And it was like, we have to talk more.
I think one of the things that can be said about their work, so at least the work that I focused on in the show, where I mean in the kind of borrowing of the ready-made aesthetic, or like bringing things into a gallery space that are things that you can see outside of a gallery space. It's something that I can be very excited about, because it makes you look at those things in a different way, and at the same time people that are not it's a criticism that people make in terms of what you can expect from a contemporary art institution.
True.
That is very deceiving in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think they bring something else to the table. It's not just ready-made, it's like ready-made plus. If I can say.
Yeah.
And
it's also the positioning of the work, like the really like this, the room around the work and how you would come to be standing in front of the work. I think that's to me what's also important with these works.
Yeah. To me, it was like for Karen Lazard's piece that I don't want to say that because it might not be the right title.
Yeah.
You can know the one with the white noise machines. You can miss it. If you see it, you're like, what? Carol Roland is like also so sparse, like the way things are being placed in a gallery space, and it's a criticism that can be made as well. I mean, I think it's in sparseness and scarcity of the practice, and at the same time it enables to question the solidity of occupation of space.
I was going to say that,
which is like something that I'm always kind of working at a place like Palais de Tokyo is very demanding in the way that you always have to ask yourself why this has to take so much space in a way. I mean, it's so huge, and it's always kind of adopting the mentality of the occupier in a lot of ways. I mean, to me, it's always in my mind when I'm installing a space. I'm always like, okay, how do you occupy or inhabit or take a space? And there is like definitely like a parallel to be made between like how curators and artists colonize spaces, and I think it's something that kind of came up quite quickly in my across. I mean, when I was in London, we set up a space with like 4 other people called Clearview, and it was in North London in an area called Seven Sisters, just at the edge of Tottenham Hale. And it's an area that is known for like that has a history of rioting and social uprising, and they have that. The space we had was in an industrial area that was nicknamed the Artist Colony.
Oh yeah.
So you cannot avoid the analogy. And the way we were participating in like a certain justification process, and so that's something that has always been kind of in my mind in the way I work, and in the way I'm gonna like also physically occupy space. With like exhibitions,
which are always temporary.
Which are always temporary. Yeah, actually.
No, but I mean, it's also interesting to think about that, like the occupation of space, or in the case, like, because I mean, I've never experienced the work of Caroline Lazard in real life. I've only seen it online. But I could imagine that you could also say that in terms of the work operates in 2 ways, right? It's, on one hand, it's occupying space, but it's also claiming a space. That it's also keeping it free to for any kind of interaction in that moment in time. Like it could be like one that is violent, but it could be one that is intimate, and I think that's also what is interesting with the exhibition as well, is that it is always temporary. I mean, it's the housing of like the institution, like the infrastructure itself that's one thing, but also like the exhibition is only there for a certain. I mean, I don't know how long are the exhibitions at Palais de Tokyo. Is months and months and months.
Yeah, it's like classic, like 3 to 4. Yeah, you know.
But I mean, but the exhibition is something that is is built, de-installed, and then it moves on. And I think that's also what's really, as a concept, that the exhibition is interesting because it's constantly changing. Like, it's never static, which is what I think you mentioned in an interview, that you made an exhibition which you referred to as an exhibition that ran after itself, that it was
that was my first exhibition. Yes.
Which, for me, like that, it was a show that is completely decentralized. Right?
Yeah.
And it was operating, is located itself in multiple.
Yeah. It was like quite a wild thing. I think at the time I had lots of energy.
Yeah.
to kind of work really like beyond. I mean, it was like not at all like no budget, very self-led, only with like the ambition of my own ambition and the desire to work with like artists, really.
Yeah.
And so it was like lots of people, but I think somehow it was very much. It had very much to do with the way I had experienced contemporary art in the first place, because the first time I saw consciously contemporary art was at the age of 16, and it was like a festival, and it was taking like it was happening across the whole city, the whole city of Toulouse, which is where I grew up from 10 to 18, and so like for me, contemporary art was always that. It was always that thing that doesn't have to be stuck in one place and happen inside, but something that could also in terms of its temporality and in terms of its location and the way you would experience it, could happen in very different places, which is also questionable. Again, this idea of occupation and public space and how this is being, and I'm sure there are examples in instances of contemporary art public commissions being made to actually choreograph or control even more the way people occupy a space.
In
a lot of ways. But that definitely had it's kind of going back to this idea of the binary model, and so I think I was not aware of this at the time, but I was just like, okay, let's try to do something that is going to be. I didn't have the possibility to do something in galleries. I didn't have a space myself, and I was not. I didn't have the pedigree. For people to be like, yes, come do something at art space. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do it outside, and within my own kind of possibilities. And so it happened in Paris, in 3 different spaces, public spaces across. It was like a month-long project. It was happening every Saturday or Sundays. And the spaces themselves were selected because they had that relationship to this idea of the chase. And so it was Les Arènes de Lutèce, which are basically at the heart of Paris. And it's an ancient arena, basically, where you had I don't know if it was used for gladiators fight, but that's in my imaginary. That's what was happening there. Basically. Or at least types of performances. Actually, one of the things that I remember right now, they used to kind of fill it with water, so they could have boats and stuff. That's kind of insane. And the other one was a playground in Belleville, very nearby, but which actually was designed for children to challenge their own idea of risk. So it's very on a very steep hill, and it looks very dangerous. It's kind of insane. I would be no, I do not bring my children over there because they're gonna fall for sure. But it's kind of beautiful, the architecture and everything, and actually, like, there is not. I mean, I have never heard of any accident that happened there, but there was that specific architecture that I was interested in, and then a skate park in Bercy. And yeah, I was like, the project was called La Poursuite, which is the chase in French, and already I was interested in this idea of basically like, yeah, an exhibition running after itself or an exhibition fleeing itself, basically.
Yeah.
And so the selection of the works had to do with either the locations where they were like being shown, and one gesture by one of the artists, for instance, was to capture all of the artworks at the end of the whole project, for instance. So they, I don't know. I mean, when I think about it, it was kind of insane. And I think a lot of things that I'm thinking about now are when I planted the seeds. I think already then. I was not aware of like a lot of things, but I had those intuitions. I would say.
I hope this message finds you well.
I want to ask you on something you mentioned earlier, that the question of value is becoming increasingly important for you, or that is something you think about a lot. And I was wondering, from what perspective do you approach the question of value? Because I share this interest very much, and the kind of complexity of that notion, which most oftentimes when people speak about, they think about monetary value, but there is like social value, the symbolic value. You can also approach it from the question of subjectivity and objectivity, which I think, in regards to art institutions, especially public institutions, is really interesting to talk about, where they claim that they represent some sort of objectivity, and the strangeness which comes with that kind of statement or sentiment. So I was just wondering, what is your approach to the question of value?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I think was also kind of always there, because the question of class has always been like, well, maybe I was not aware of that at the beginning, and actually I think I came to contemporary art because I had the desire to escape a certain like social environment, and so because it was representing that kind of there was like this idea of luxury that I was attaching to contemporary art, although it's a very precarious field. But at the time, and for some people it is very luxurious, actually, and also the idea of being intellectually challenged, and so there were those two things. But then it's also something that I started to very much obviously be critical of, knowing what we all know about in terms of how artists can be very precarious, or any art workers that operate independently, and in terms of what is being presented to us in institutions. It's always like, the kind of value that objects have in relation to how much people are paid. I mean, it's just like insane to me, the kind of gaps that we and tensions that we work with. But very recently I started to work with Anna Collin, who is a curator she's a French curator. She's kind of known for having led a whole series of exhibitions around the figure of the witch.
Oh yeah.
But like before it became like trendy. and so in relation to like gender and queerness, basically, and other things, and she founded that school called Open Schoolist, which was a free art school in the UK, where the art education and any type of higher education is very expensive to afford. And so recently she embarked into a new journey, learning about landscape design, and pursuing a PhD around alternative art education. And we've been like colleagues first because I was interning at the Lafayette Foundation, Lafayette Special, and she was assistant curator there for a few years. And last year we started to work together on 2 projects that are actually thinking about this idea of value. And the outcome of those projects are going to manifest between the end of this month, actually, and September. There is like a whole series of videos that interviews that with like a few people are like thinking about this idea of value, or like we ask them questions about this idea of value in contemporary arts specifically, and so many discussions are gonna happen because it's gonna be followed up with like some kind of seminar in September. Anyways, so like this whole idea of value to me is very much related to, first of all, this idea of class, I would say, and the gap that there is between contemporary art and people. I mean, it's a very elitist. It's a very elitist field. I think you need a lot of codes. You need a lot of knowledge to be able to approach things in a way that is not scary. I don't know. I mean, it's like approaching contemporary art, I think, can be very scary. Yeah. And I think we all, at some point at the very beginning, if you didn't grow up with contemporary art, you are at some point scared. Yeah. Even to enter, to enter spaces or to, and so like we're trying to think about why and how we can undo this, basically. Yeah. Like what's the matter with the and at the same time, ecologically speaking, the impact that contemporary art production has and the way we do exhibitions, for some people, it's like, and I think I've done that as well. I mean, it's not taking into account the impact that it has in terms of waste, in terms of flights. Although it's not about like putting any kind of blame on like personal people, because it's always like systemic kind of issues. I think it's important to try to think about this as well, and then obviously like all of the subject related to like representation and where the money comes from. I mean, it's like very tangible and subjects at the moment. We cannot avoid those things. But I think it's very in terms of the civil kind of role that art can have. I think and that's why I'm really happy to go to CAPC in Bordeaux, where I'm gonna work from September, because it's like a museum and an art center that is like city owned, I would say, and so that mission is at the core of the institution, and my job is no longer to just like present artists for the sake of it, or just there is like a real mission for me to kind of what do I do and what do we say as an institution, but also how do we actually like make it more of a democratic space as well in terms of how decisions are being made, and so I have lots of ideas in terms of how things can happen actually, and I think it's also like continuing on this idea of curatorial vulnerability. And as much as I said exhibitions should always try to like destroy the exhibition format in one or another, I think I'm also trying to think of curating as moving towards its own the destruction of the idea of curating as well. So it's I think and I don't know if I will be able to do it, because I think it requires a lot of you need to be very brave. But I think ultimately the final goal for me is like for curating to not exist in a way, or to not myself on a personal level to not operate as a curator anymore, and see how curating can happen in other ways as well. And I have my little idea of how that can happen. And my next move is to become a reality TV producer.
Oh.
That's something that I've started to say more and more. So
okay. Well, we did have that as a question. What would you do if you weren't a curator? We know that now.
I want to sign up for that revolution of destroying curating. I always say to Eloise, and maybe this works against myself saying this on public, but that I'm with one leg out of the profession, and it doesn't mean I love it so much. I love to talk about it. I love working with artists, but there are also these things that I feel are necessary to dismantle. So I want to join you in the project.
I think the difficulty in the art one is that people. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I think I'm speaking from a position of privilege when I say this because I work for institutions. At the same time, I do things like as an independent curator. So I have that much kind of visibility and power, you could say now, that I'm able to say that. I think if I was like independent curator, that I was like not paid well or anything, I would not be having this discourse. And I think it's like for me thinking about this idea of redistribution a lot of power and resource, of how now that I'm occupying this position, how can I rewire and think about inviting other people, whether they are curators or other. Like I want to try those. There is that very interesting institution in Berlin called NGBK, which operates with that kind of on a membership basis, and they have artists and other type of art workers involved in the institution, and the program is based on the open call process, and then all of the members of the association kind of attend presentations of the project and then decide on which one are going to be part of the program, basically. And so I don't think they even have a curator.
Yeah.
And I'm quite interested in this. I'm quite interested in how that membership at the level of a city or museum like Capc can be. Basically, I would like the people to be involved in the process of deciding in one way or another on the program. That doesn't mean that I don't have. I mean, there's still like a level of expertise. I would say at some point that can be brought on the table, but maybe it's not as a curator. Maybe it's like as someone who is aware of what happens in contemporary art, so they're able to like speak about it to the audience. And I think it's always been like a very kind of it's a very important mission of mine, I think, to be able to like speak about art and contemporary art to like anyone. And it's very, 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 very difficult. It's like I feel like I'm always failing. But and so now that's why probably I'm interested in like reality TV. I mean, I'm interested in like YouTube. I'm interested in like that kind of culture that makes any type of knowledge available. Tutorials. I mean, I don't know. It's fascinating to me. Those types of things. And so it's at the core of what I'm doing. I'm hoping one day that I will achieve those missions.
I hope this message finds you well.
If you are interested in Cédric's writing, we recommend the article Transactional Objects Full of Context in Voided Sites, published by Musée magazine, as well as checking out his curated exhibition Governmental Fires at FUTURA in Prague, Czech Republic. We've linked both items in the show notes.
Our next episode is our last of the season before we take a break and interview our next guests. In it are some of the outtakes from all the interviews which did not make it into the main edit. We discuss subjects of labour, care and curatorial myths.
As always, if you have feedback, You can email us at ihopethismessagefindsyouvell@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at ihopethismessage and find us on SoundCloud under the same handle. Our jingle was by the band Difficult and sound engineering was done by Nick Thomas.
Hope well finds message. You finds message. This message. I well you finds you. I hope. Well hope. Message this. I you this. Well finds you. Finds you hope. You this I. Well. Hope well finds message. You finds message. This message. I. Well you finds you. I hope. Well hope. Message this. I you this. This.